Shutting the volume. Okay,
All right.
we're in.
We are ready.
We are ready. Okay, so spring nuts, spring nuts. Once again, I ask you, is anyone alive out there? I want to welcome back to the Spring Nuts Cafe, everyone. Tonight, we have the incredible honor of welcoming a very, very special guest. For more than 5 decades, he has been the heartbeat behind one of the greatest rock and roll bands in the world. He has sat behind that drum kit night after night, giving the thunder, the groove, the passion, and the unmistakable sound that has helped define the music of Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. But his story goes beyond the drums. He is a rock and roll Hall of Famer, a longtime member of the E Street Band, a band leader, television personality, author, and one of the most respected and beloved figures in the world of rock and roll. From the legendary early days of the E Street Band, from Born to Run, Darkness on the Edge of Town, The River, Born in the USA, and so many incredible chapters that followed, he has been there, behind the kit, driving the music forward and helping create memories that millions of people around the world will never forget. And for those of us who have had the privilege of watching him perform live, we know that when Max starts playing, you don't just hear the music, you feel it. But perhaps what makes tonight even more special for us here at Spring Nuts is that Max represents something we deeply believe in, the idea that music isn't simply something you listen to. Music brings people together and it creates friendships and it creates community and becomes part of the soundtrack of our lives. And for more than 50 years, Max Weinberg has been part of that soundtrack. So, Spring Nuts, get ready. It's our absolute pleasure, our honor, and one hell of a thrill to welcome one of the greatest drummers in rock and roll history, a founding member of the E Street Band, the mighty Max Weinberg.
Woohoo!
Thank
Hello, one and all. Thank
you.
you, lady and gentlemen. Good to be with you, and thanks for your support through the years of everything that Bruce and Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band do. It is indeed my pleasure to be with you tonight and to talk about whatever you'd like to talk about. 50
Well,
years, considering I'm only 35, well, that's believable, actually.
beyond the womb, beyond the womb, you were playing. You've affected us. But I want to welcome you, Max, to the Spring Nuts Cafe. I want to welcome our host, Ryan Hilligoss, Stan Goldstein, and of course, my beautiful, beautiful wife, Julie, to the podcast. And with that being said, I don't want to take any more time. I want to get right into it. Ryan, steer the ship.
Max, thank you for doing this. It's an absolute honor to talk to you. I've been fortunate enough to meet you a few times at some of the big band shows and the jukebox shows. And anytime I've had been able to chance to talk to you, you've been very kind and gracious, and we're always welcome and warm to the fans. So, just speaking for myself and all the rest of the fans who've had a chance to meet you, just want to say thank you for that.
Well, it was my pleasure. And listen, without the fans of the music for all these years, all these decades, where would we be? We'd still have great music, but nobody would have heard it. Nobody would have come. So, we're not playing lip service to the fact that we so deeply appreciate everybody who has gone through what they've gone through the years to get the vinyl back in the old days, stand in line, wait for the pit to open up, all of that. We know it well, and we thank you.
Just as a sign of how much Max is very gracious. Max, I had a chance to take my dad to see you, see the big band, which I love seeing you with the big band. Not just, I love the jukebox show, but the big band was awesome. I know it's not fiduciary, doable now, but anyway, took my dad to see you in Alton, Illinois, which most people watching don't know, but that's Alton, Illinois was the birthplace of Miles Davis. That's not where Miles grew up, but that's where he was born.
Mhm.
Anyway, I took my dad to see you. He loved it. Uh, we had a chance to talk to you, and after the show, your security guy was kind of pulling you like, "Hey Max, it's time to go." My dad had asked you how you got started, and you were telling him the story, and you were like, "No, I'm talking to this guy, and I'm going to finish my story." And it was that just really registered with me and warmed my heart. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome for that. That was in 2010. I put together my big band. And we did that for about, 10 or 11 months playing on the road. And I refer to it as the money pit, but it was something I'd always wanted to do. And when I left TV, I went right into that. And it was a lot of fun. But, I'll tell you something. When I was younger, I guess I was in my 20s, I met a drum hero of mine. And uh, he did not give me that reaction, and I've
Mm.
never forgotten it. I
Hmm.
didn't really have time to talk. And I love people who come up and say hi. And yes, I do have a guy who, come on, we gotta go. And
Hmm.
I'm not done yet.
Hmm.
When I'm done, So I'm glad you had that experience, and I
Yeah.
do remember Colton.
So first question, obviously we want to get to know you. Obviously there's a lot of Bruce material, but you've done so much. It's like we talked to Stevie last week, and it's like, where do you start? There's so much out there. You've done so much stuff. It's hard to get there. But this is gonna be a two-part question. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and your family beginnings up until the time you're 7 years old. I need you to stop before you're 7 years old. There's a very specific reason why. There's a second part to this.
Okay. Wow. This is like real TV. Okay.
Yeah, it's like 20
Well, I
We,
questions.
was
we,
born
we
in
don't play
19
games here.
I was
60
born in
minutes.
1951 in Newark, Jersey, and my roots are in Newark, New Jersey. We lived in the South Ward, which was, if you're flying into Newark Airport and you see the Budweiser building right behind that. And
Mm,
uh, grew up there. And then when my younger sister, Abby, was born, we outgrew the two-family house we were in and moved to Maplewood, New Jersey. But that was where my formative years were spent. And it's very much like out of a Neil Simon comedy. Big, big, big Jewish family. I had 17 first cousins. My sister and I were the youngest of all those cousins. So I had a lot of interesting influences as a child because my oldest cousin had been born in 19, I think 23. So I had all those influences, and it was a very, very tight family and musical. My mother, Ruth, who taught at Weequahic High School in Newark for 46 years,
wow.
she kept extending that because every year she got younger by a year. So she was there until she was about 80. Uh, she was a phys ed teacher and loved Broadway musicals. A musical fanatic. So from the age of about 4, every Saturday afternoon, that is my two much older sisters and I would go to see a Broadway show. And it was spectacular in those days. It still is, but in those days they would have 60 musicians in the pit band, and it was most impressive. And, we'd sit in the cheap seats. You could go for $1 a matinee and sit in the balcony.
Wow.
So I consider myself extraordinarily fortunate in that I saw so many original. I saw the original My Fair Lady,
Mm.
Little Abner. And so my roots in music really started in two ways: Broadway musicals and a guy named Xavier Cugat.
Mm,
Xavier Cugat had a 15-minute TV show. He was a Cuban violinist who had an orchestra, very much like Desi Arnaz, but he had a 15-minute show on TV. He was married to the beautiful, who just passed away recently within the last 6 weeks, I think, Abby Lane,
Mm.
very redhead from Brooklyn. And it was a Latin band, Latin music, and everybody played a drum.
Mm.
And I was a nervous kid. And I used to, when we'd watch this show, I would beat on the floor. And
Mm.
my father went down to a place called Dorn and Kirshner in Newark, New Jersey, and bought me a kid's size conga drum. But it was a real drum. It wasn't a fake drum. So now I had something to do in watching the Xavier Cugat show. And this is around 1954, maybe in the middle of 1954. So right away, my parents were, in retrospect, and I've realized this a long time, very hip to be plugged into the nervous energy as I had as a kid, probably would be diagnosed these days as some sort of disorder, but they channeled it into music and drums specifically. And I'd walk around that house. I still have that drum.
Ah!
I do. And I don't play it. I've outgrown it. It won't fit around anymore. But I'd just go around the house and beat on that drum when I was, 3, 4 years old. And that was something I plugged into very early. The combination of, seeing these fantastic orchestras with scores by, Rodgers and Hammerstein, Rodgers and, Lowe, Lerner and Lowe, I should say. I saw uh, Julie Andrews and Rex Harrison in the original My Fair Lady.
Oh,
But I also had two teenage sisters at the time, quite a bit older than me. One was a classical music fanatic and still is, my sister Nancy. My sister Patty, who sadly passed away in 2000, was
Sorry.
rock and roll fanatic. And together they were kind of like in Greece, Sandy and her best friend. Patty,
ah.
the hooker, was like the best friend. And she was an Elvis fanatic,
Mm-mm.
and
So,
old enough.
Max, can I stop you there? Can I stop you there, Max?
It's your show. You can stop me wherever you want.
Well, you
Uh,
said the magic word, so.
yeah, the Big Beat. I've got it here. You can't really see it, but the Big Beat. You can still get a copy of it. The Big Beat from Max Weinberg with Bob Santelli. You interviewed Hal Blaine, one of your heroes, Dino Danelli, DJ Fontana, one of my heroes, Ringo, Charlie Watts, Earl Palmer, Jim Keltner, Levon Helm. Anyway, I just want to read from this just a little bit. This
How
is
about
how
Ringo
the spirit
Starr?
captured me. The night that Elvis Presley first appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show, my older sisters dressed me as Elvis, complete with mascara, sideburns, and a rubber band cardboard guitar. Amazement gripped us as Elvis and his band took over our living room. My sisters swooned when he sang Love Me Tender, and we all lost our minds when they tore into Hound Dog. But when DJ Fontana's drum roll hit, I put down the guitar. The lick came around again. I picked up the beat, banging on the floor. Max, please, my mother cried out. But it was too late. DJ's drumming rolled out across the airwaves, filled up my senses, and swept me away. I'm a
Never
huge
been the
Elvis
same
fan. I'm a huge
since.
Elvis fan. So when you talk about DJ Fontana and Scotty and Bill and the original Elvis band, what is it you think that, I know it's been, X amount of years, but what is it you think that really captured you about DJs playing that night?
Well, the first time we actually saw Elvis was on the Milton Berle show after he had played on the Dorsey Brothers. Now I'm really going back in history. After he had played on the Dorsey's summer replacement show. This was a full year before Ed Sullivan. But the first Sullivan appearance, um, you saw the band. You saw the three guys, Scotty Moore, Bill Black, and DJ Fontana, and Elvis. So it looked like a band, although I didn't know what a band was at the time. I knew what orchestras were. But when DJ, as I've said in the book and many, many times since, when he played that role in Hound Dog, the music stopped and the drums took over, and it was like a call to arms. DJ was a very, very dear, close family friend. My son Jay and I traveled to hospice to see him shortly before he passed. Last time he came out of his house was I played in Nashville and at a club with the jukebox, and DJ mustered up the energy that night. And I had a car pick him up and take him to this club, and it was the last time he was out in public. And of course, and Gary Talent was there, and we played Jailhouse Rock. And I think it's online, but I was
Wow.
moved to make this very impromptu speech about DJ. He was the sweetest, loveliest guy you could ever meet, and an unbelievable drummer, if I may. Since we're on the subject of DJ Fontana, you guys may remember years and years ago, there was a benefit at the Count Basie Theater that Gary Talent organized. And he had a group of Nashville musicians and a lot of the early rockabilly guys. And DJ was the house drummer. And Bruce got up to sing, I think it was a song called Ida Rose.
Yes.
And I could tell, having been an extremely close Bruce watcher through as a musician, when DJ planted that beat, Bruce got this big smile on his face
Mhm.
because for him it looked like like he was feeling like it was a direct link to the early days of Elvis. Because when DJ played, he didn't sound like anybody. He was a big band drummer playing rock and roll. And all those guys, all my early heroes, were coming out of the big band era. And so, as I said, he was a lovely guy. We went to his house the night before I played in Nashville. He had not yet been in hospice, but he had his Elvis drum
Wow.
set up
Huh.
living room.
Wow.
Wow.
I was with Jay, and it was an amazing moment. Matty, my drum tech, was there, and he actually arranged for a DJ to come to the show. But we all took pictures sitting on that drum set with the goatskin head on it. It was an unbelievable thrill.
Mm. So you're walking around
The
banging on the
second part of
con.
your question.
That was part two. You're walking around banging on a conga drum. You see DJ Fontana and Elvis on Ed Sullivan. Walk us through a little bit of your development as far as how you got serious into playing. Were you taking lessons at that time? Just kind of walk us through your development as a drummer as you got older.
Well, I had an older cousin who gave me a beat up snare drum, and I used to play along the records. I had a record player with a spindle. For all of you out there who have no idea what a spindle is, it's about 4 or 5 inches tall and it drops the 45s as they play on the record player. I was glued to that record player. This was not stereo, this was mono. And um, I had 3 years of good vision before I started wearing glasses. I started wearing glasses in 1954.
Mm.
And I hated wearing glasses, and I hated going to the place that made the glasses, which was down on Broad Street in Newark, New Jersey.
Mhm.
But that was on the third floor. On the second floor was a wholesale record distributor. And my sort of prize, like a Cracker Jack box, leave after, being dragged in to get new glasses, was we'd stop at the wholesaler and he would give away what's called cutouts. They used to put like a punch, a hole in the 45 so you couldn't sell them. And I come out of there with a bag full of records,
That's cool.
a lot of obscure records, but no, some records that were, fairly successful. So I had a bunch of records, all different types, Latin, jazz, you name it. Not really jazz, but sort of like Dixieland and stuff like that. And so I had this snare drum, and he gave me a pair of drumsticks, which I still have, and I could beat out a little beat. And one of the songs was "When the Saints Come Marching In," and you sort of do the Gene Krupa, da 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 da. And I could do that pretty. I was a fearless. I was 5, 6 years old. I was fearless. And we were at some sort of family function. It could have been a wedding or a bar mitzvah at one of these catering halls. I remember it was in Short Hills, New Jersey. And I must have been about 7.5, maybe 6.5, 7 years old. There was a band there, a little orchestra. And my mother was something of a stage mother and went up. And my mother used to dress me really, she couldn't afford it, but I was her only son in a Jewish family. So I was dressed to the nines. I had this black mohair suit with a skinny red tie and a tan collar shirt, and I was 7 years old. Uh, she goes up to the band leader, whose name is Herbie Zane, who was the local guy. He was from Livingston, New Jersey. If you ever read Harlan Coben books, also from Livingston, he talks about Herbie Zane. But I went up there and with my mother, and my mother said to Herbie Zane, my son plays drums. Can he play with you? And he looks down at this little kid, not much bigger than a drumstick, and said, What? He couldn't believe it. He goes, All right. Basically, he didn't say this, but let's see what you can do. So I go up there. They had to lower the seat for me so I could reach the pedal. Basically, all I could do was play boom, 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 boom on the bass drum. Couldn't operate the hi-hat cymbals, but I could play on the snare drum. Jacques, da, 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 and I could play a little jazz beat. Ding, ding, a ding, ding, a ding, ding, a ding, ding, a ding, back a ding, back a ding, back. So I did that, and it blew everybody's mind. I was fearless. I did this little drum solo. I was a little kid. So Herbie Zane hired me as a novelty act for his club dates. And he was a little bit of Borscht Belt comedian in him. He would explain that I was, really 40 years old. I just looked old. He looked young, and he'd pay me. This is in 1950, 57, 58. And he paid me a quarter, eventually 50 cents to play one or two little, marchy kind of things as a novelty. That's how I got my start.
Wow.
And as I said, my mother was a bit of a stage mother, and but it was great because I was a playing. I mean, he was one of the oldest people I'd ever seen, and he probably was 30 at the time. And I was this a little kid. I was used to being around my cousins, but not musicians. But they took me under their wing, and not long ago, uh, a picture was sent to my office. Uh, Someone got a picture of me playing with Herbie Zane
Wow.
at one
Wow.
of these, myriad gigs. And this is way before, this was this weird time between Elvis going in the army and the Beatles. There was from 58 to 64, that's 6 years. You had Chubby Checker and the Twist, and you had all the Frankies, Frankie Avalon, Fabi, and they made great records. Don't get me wrong. Those records, record called Dee Dee Dinah by Frankie Avalon, where he held his nose and he sang. That was a big, big hit. And, they always had great rhythm sections on those records, even if they were a little pop oriented. And I was working all the time, and they didn't call it a rock beat. At that point, I got a drum teacher when I was about 8, lovely man from Maplewood, New Jersey, named Gene Thaler, who loved the drums. Never had huge success as an independent drummer in the 40s or 50s. Although he did play on a hit record, "If I Knew You Were Coming, I'd have baked you a cake." It
Ah,
was a big hit, and he played drums on that. And he was just a lovely, sweet guy who just transmitted the love of drums. But I was taught very kind of classically, rudiments, books. You had to practice. And it was known as the twist beat. We're going to teach you the twist beat. Boom, bop, bop, boom, bop, boom, which is the basis. So that beat actually changed my life because not only was I able to hear it with DJ, little variations of it, now I could play it on a drum set, although I didn't have a drum set. I didn't get a drum set till much later, but I played it on my bed. One
Mhm.
of the reasons I have fast hands and strong wrists is because I used to play on a bed
Hmm.
for about 3 years, taking lessons. So there's no rebound.
Right.
Develop the strength to do that. But with Herbie Zane, I was playing cha-chas, merengues, and tangos once I got, adept at it. So I had a natural ability to play. If I heard something, I could play it. At least I could fake it, not mess it up. But with Herbie, eventually I started playing real dates with him. And then when the Beatles happened, my Beatles story is kind of, I don't know if it's interesting, but it's certainly unique in my experience. I was booked. I had a little sort of Dixieland band, trumpet, stand-up bass, and piano and drums. And there's pictures of this, which someday I will release to the public. And we were booked to play the seventh grade dance in November of 63. So by this point, I had a drum set for about 8 months, little blue sparkle Kent set of drums. One of the things I had in common as soon as I met Bruce was he had a Kent guitar
Mhm.
and I had a Kent set of drums. So there was a simpatico there between us. This
Mhm.
was back in the 70s. And wow, you had a Kent, I had a Kent guitar, you had Kent drums, and they were sparkle pearl. I love drums. I sold it to get my second set, which I still have. But I was booked to play the seventh grade dance, which coincidentally coincided, I should say, with a schoolmate of mine. Her name was Jane, who was leaving that week on a trip to England with her father on business. So she wasn't going to be at the dance. And November 22nd, 1963 was the dance.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
We all know what happened at 12:30 that afternoon. The dance was canceled. I can recall standing outside waiting for my father to pick me up with his station wagon and my drums.
Mhm.
And Jane came back a week later or so, 10 days from England, with this record, this album called Please Please Me, I think it was called. And it was the
Mm.
first Beatle record. It was released in England, and they were already big in England. Nobody knew them over here. And I heard it, at her house, and sounded like the Everly Brothers, who I was a big fan of at the time, and had a lot of hits. So, of course, it's no news to anybody, but you started seeing these signs on the turnpike. And if you know where Fraternity Rock is on the
Oh
New
yeah.
Turnpike, there was a billboard there that said, "The Beatles are coming."
Hmm.
And I knew the Beatles were a rock group. Nobody knew who the Beatles were. And that's all it said. It had no picture, no anything, but the Beatles are coming. And that was the promo. So they got to New York on February 7th. They famously played on February 9th, which is a Sunday night, changed everybody's life that I knew. And on February 10th, I told the guys in my Dixieland band, I'm going out looking for guitar players. So that was the end of the Dixieland band. And I did find a ninth grader who played guitar. And then I found another guy who was in 10th grade from a different town who also played guitar and started my first rock band. We were called the Epsilons. It was a famous thing that, well,
Epsilons.
not famous, but it was popular to name your bands after, like the Greek alphabet. The Delta, the Alphas. We were the Epsilons. Eventually, it fit because we eventually got five members, and we were five members of the band. So by the time I met Bruce and the guys, I was 23, so I'd been playing for like 16 years.
Wow.
Every kind of job you can imagine.
Wow.
I backed strippers, I played behind comedians. It was it was actually fantastic training to join the E Street Band. But my first love was rock and roll.
Well, you're not alone. That's one of the things DJ was doing before he met Elvis was playing for burlesque dancers down in Memphis.
Well, absolutely, and yeah, he said if in a movie, if they had a strip club joint, and you could see him play in the first three Elvis movies, that he was the guy, he was the guy. And by the way, I don't know if people know this, but Elvis, of course, had his fantastic road band, and in the studio in Hollywood and in Memphis, he used studio musicians, but he always had DJ there
Hmm.
playing a tambourine, if not the drums.
Hmm.
And you bring up the Big Beat, which came out, and my co-writer Bob Santelli, who everyone on E Street is intimately aware of Bob's history and what he does. He was teaching college at the time at Monmouth, teaching history, and Dave Marsh, who we sadly lost
Mm.
last week, was the impetus for writing that book. We're flying. We had played at the Roxy in LA, and we took a commercial flight over to Phoenix, and it was that show. You may have seen the video clip of Rosalita when all the girls jumped up and grabbed Bruce, and Jimmy McDuffie came over and tried to release him from the grip. And I think Bruce may have said, "Just give me another 10 minutes. This is fun." But that little sojourn we had in LA, a guy named Harvey Kubernick, who was Mr. LA rock and roll, introduced me to Hal Blaine, great, late, fantastic session drummer who, for a long time, I mean, he played on everything out of Los Angeles, something like 35,000 singles.
Hmm.
Scary, the drummer of the Knack, once said to me, it's his original thought, one of the most disappointing and enlightening times he ever heard when he found out that 50 of his favorite drummers were Hal Blaine. It's really true. Everything. Birds, Beach Boys, Frank Sinatra, you name it. He
Wow.
even played on Buddy Rich's daughter, Kathy Rich's rock album.
Mhm.
And Buddy Rich asked him, Hal asked Buddy Rich, Buddy, why didn't you play? You're the greatest drummer in the world. He said, no, no, not at this. You're the greatest drummer in the world at this stuff.
Wow.
These drum stories, I could go on forever. You don't want to bore you with them.
We'd
Drummers
love
really,
more.
so Dave Marsh was the one who said, gee, you met Hal Blaine. I was so jazzed at meeting him. And at that point, I'd started to meet Johnny B from Mitch Ryder's band. And I saw Mitch Ryder in the Detroit Wheels at Trudy Heller's. I
Wow.
saw him. I had fake ID. You had to get, in those days, you could do that. You could get,
Oh, yeah.
know, you could also get an ABC card, which allowed you to play in bars where they served liquor when you were 16.
Huh.
Conveniently, my father got me an ID that said I was born in 1949. So that really, and uh, so, Dave said, wow, you're meeting these guys. You should write a book. Writing a book was so far off my radar. But had it not been for Dave, who hooked me up with Sandy Charin, who was his agent,
Mm.
who hooked me up with Bob Santelli. She was
Wow.
also his agent.
Hmm.
And when we started the Big Beat, Bob was teaching history, written a couple of books, and started giving me assignments. All right, this is what you're going to do this week. We were simultaneously recording in the middle of that, Born in the USA,
Hmm.
which went forever, and I was having operations on my hands. And to Bruce's great credit, I mean, this is inside stuff, but whenever I had this operation on my hand, I couldn't play for about 8, 10 weeks, and he'd stop the recording process.
Mm.
May have led to him writing 80 or 90 songs.
Thank
He
you.
waited for me. He waited for me. Most people would not have done that.
Wow.
I do remember recording, and I'm jumping around a bit, but maybe your listeners would and viewers would appreciate it. I do remember putting the drums on my hometown, and I had a cast on my left arm, and I taped a stick into my
Oh,
cast.
wow.
Uh,
It was luckily, it was a very simple beat. And he had recorded that in his LA home garage studio. And then he had a little beat, and I put on the hi-hat and the drum beat that's on the record by myself. I was there in the studio by myself, but I had a cast on. So I still have the cast, and I got everybody in the band to sign the cast.
Wow.
So we jumped around. I was just one of those guys, what they used to call a legitimate drummer. You ended up having to play everything if you wanted to work. And the deal with my folks was they were very professional people, and they said, if you're going to do this, you have to do it seriously, and you have to do it. You have to work at it, and work with it. So there was no generation gap in my household. I went out, I could earn money playing the drums, and they thought that was great. And it's a whole long story, and someday I'll maybe write a book about it. But it was that support I got from my mother and my father and my sisters who put up with the racket,
Hmm.
learning to play the drums in the attic, unheated and not air conditioned. By the way, how my son learned how to play the drums in a barn, unheated, non-air conditioned.
Wow.
And that's the best way to learn because if it's cold, you'll warm yourself up. And if it's really hot, it just gets you ready to play the Stone Pony. Which,
Right.
by the way, I'm doing next Sunday on the
Yes.
30th.
That's
But
right.
I
We're gonna.
digress. So, by the time I met Bruce, he put an ad in the paper, and that famous ad that, in the Village Voice, and myself, and I do remember there were a lot more than 30 drummers. I don't know about keyboard players, but I knew several of the drummers who auditioned, and there were better drummers than I was. But I'm not so sure there were any drummers that had more heart than I had. And I think
Hmm.
that's what. Plus, I was a good improviser, and I took direction really well. I had been playing in a Broadway show, so it was what they used to call which they don't anymore, but I'm old enough to remember at 75 what they used to call legitimate drummers.
Hmm.
Legitimate meant you played everything. You played a little bit of everything, to keep working. You weren't a rock drummer, a jazz drummer, or fusion or clap. You just did everything you could. And that's how you became well-rounded, and that's how you continued working.
Max, I got one question for you, which leads into Bruce, but I wanted to read in Born to Run, Bruce writes a whole chapter about the band, each member, what they brought to the band, what he appreciates. So for those of you that haven't read it, on drums, Max, the mighty Max Weinberg, a bundle of drive, neurosis, and wily suburban street smarts. This is Bruce's words, Max. I'm not describing you this way. Just want to make sure that's clear. And source of great humor, Max found a place where Bernard Purdie, Buddy Rich, and Keith Moon intersected and made it his own. The soul of dedication and commitment. Each night in the midst of continuous hurricane, our sets are designed to be the sheer physical pressure of 3 hours of non-stop, steamrolling. Rock music lies upon his shoulders more heavily than anyone else's. On stage, Max goes beyond listening to what I'm saying, signaling he hears what I'm thinking and feeling. He anticipates my thoughts as they come rolling full bore toward the drum riser. It's a near telepathy that comes from years of playing and living together. It's a real-world miracle, and it's why people love musicians. They show us how deeply we can experience one another's minds and hearts, and how perfectly we can work in Congress. With Max at my back, the questions are answered before they're asked. There are 20,000 people all about to take a breath. We're moving in for the kill. The band, all steel wheels on iron track, and that snare shot, the one I'm just thinking about, but haven't told or signaled anyone outside of this on-fire little corner of my mind about the one I want right. And there it is. Rumble, young man, rumble.
Yes, I was delighted to read that. And, a bit of neurosis is necessary to be in the East. Somewhat compulsive. All of us are. That snare shot. It's funny that Bruce wrote that, and I remember reading it, of course. And with each of us, we were coming home. I remember we were coming home from Boston, playing at Foxborough Stadium. And he had the book, and he just got the first copies. And we were all on a plane, and he gave us each a copy, and he wrote the whole frontispiece, the blank page, to each of us.
Aww.
And
Wow.
very, very nice. And during the audition, I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever heard me tell the story, but or read it, but the audition, the first one I did was on a Monday night, and we played for 3 hours. And I knew who Bruce was. I mean, I heard the name. I didn't know any of the music. And again, I was a good improviser. But I realized within 20 seconds that, wow, I have never had a musical experience like this. And this guy, he's a real deal. It was Clarence was there, Gary was there, and Danny was there. And what was not only impressive was Bruce's intensity, but the intensity with which the other three guys were hooked onto what he was doing. I never experienced that in any band. There was always, somebody lagging behind. It was deep. And I felt that right away. And one of the things he told me this later, after we took that long hiatus in 89 to whenever it was 99, 10 years of a hiatus. Certainly felt like we broke up to me, but I digress. No, it was a hiatus, and we all grew tremendously. It was actually the worst and the best of worlds. Again, that's a whole other story. But I can remember sitting on the lawn in these two chairs at his house, one of the first house he had in Los Angeles, where he had the little studio. And the band, I wasn't in the band. I saw Bruce a lot in those days, and I never knew why he chose me exactly. I just had gotten in the band. I do know that one of the existing band members voted for someone else. Which now remain nameless, but
Come on, Max. Come on.
imagination. But anyway, I said, what made you choose me? He goes, well, that's an interesting question because we auditioned so many guys. Everybody got a half hour, whether you were good or not. And, if you weren't any good, a half hour was the limit, but we didn't play any less than 30 minutes. And if you were good, we kept going a little ways. And, one of the songs they were playing at the time was kind of the showstopper before Rosalita became that, was Let the Four Winds Blow by
Mm,
Fats Domino, a song which I knew. I knew Fats Domino's, and I didn't know Bruce's, but there was a lot of syncopation in it, really accents. And as I said, I was, playing the Broadway show. I was good at, I read music. I knew, about syncopation and accents and follow the leader, whether it's a conductor with a baton or a scruffy guy with a beard and a Telecaster guitar or Esquire, I should say. So, and Bruce is, well, for me anyway, he telegraphs very often what he's going to do. And when he used to, it's a little harder now because he wears a vest, but when he used to wear a t-shirt and it would get soaking wet, there's a little muscle under his shoulder right here that it's a tell. And right before he's about to do something that would involve me, that muscle engages. Now that's deeply I watch Bruce.
mm,
And then with a sweatshirt, I mean with a shirt, a t-shirt soaking wet, you can see that. So
mm.
he started wearing vests and ties. Eventually he takes off. Then you see the white shirt soaking wet. So I'm back on track. But we were playing Let the Four Winds Blow. And at one point he went like this, bah, like stop,
Mm.
like escaping home. And that was really easy. I mean, and he said, I'll tell you the truth, most guys got that. And if they didn't get that, I did it again. If they missed it a second time, I did it the third time. If they missed it a third time, they were out.
Mm.
So it was easy, and you'd always heard about, Chuck Berry, when the foot comes up, stop. When the foot goes down, start. So you take these kinds of cues, whether it's a comedian or a stripper or dancers in a line. I learned on Broadway when there's a line of dancers, you hit cymbals to accent. So
Hmm.
I never, at that point, looked at drums as like Ginger Baker. Of course, it said no junior Ginger Bakers. To me, drums were a way to dramatically accent.
Mm.
And that was the drummer's job. It was a show band drummer. And so I got to stop. And then there was this long, long pause. I'd never played with Bruce and these guys before. Long pause, just stop dead. And then he threw out his arm like that. And I hit a snare shot when he did that. And I was the only guy who auditioned that did that. And that's what got me the job
Wow.
Wow.
because he realized I paid attention. And that's what
Mm.
he wanted. And I had chops, and I could get around, I could get around the drums, and I had good time and good feel, and I had the heart, and I could go and go and go and go, and that's there's I can right now name spontaneously 25 drummers who can drum rings around me, but I can go forever,
Mm.
you know, even though they say, don't you get tired? Yeah, yeah, I get tired, but I keep going. Because that's rock and roll to me.
Hmm.
Max, my last question before I pass it off to Howie is this: as simply as possible for us lay people, not musicians. There's perfect bookends that are documentaries. The Promise, which is about darkness and the recording of darkness, and then we get Letter to You. In that 45 years difference, you watch The Promise and it's painful what they were putting you through, what he was putting the band through. They're putting you in an elevator shaft, they're putting you in a stairwell, they're putting you in all these different places. Stick,
As long as they
stick.
didn't put me on the street, I was fine with all that.
But that was the response. Stick. Every time you tried something different, it was stick. This went on for months and months. That's one extreme. You get to Letter to You, and you guys basically do a whole album in about 4 days. As simply as you can, if you can try to explain how things have changed that much in 40 some years.
They haven't changed at all. But I'll tell you this, to finally give you the skinny on stick.
Yeah.
So I had made a few records before we started recording and rehearsing and recording Born to Run. And in those days, Ringo changed the sound of drums from very live. If you listen to the first, four or five Beatle records, they get to the end of the Beatles run and the tea towels, making the drums very dead and thumpy. So that became the sound because the Beatles did it, everybody did it.
Mhm.
And to get that, to get the kind of separation in the studio. So when, you went from 8 track, I mean, I started recording on 4 track, 8 track, 16 track, Born to Run was 16 track. So you could control everything. Some people thought, still think, my colleague Steve Van Zandt still thinks, you kind of, the more tracks you have, you lose something. Uh, they created these drum booths, which were basically an ISO booth completely covered in carpet, where you couldn't get a drum sound in, like the sound of the drum, which is resonant. The sound of a drum in a gymnasium, that's when you can really hear the true sound of a drum. So Bruce,
Mhm.
if you look at pictures of the Wrecking Crew, Hal Blaine playing on Be My Baby or any of the songs that we love, they were all in the same room together. They had little, what they call gobos, or little glass, barriers, but the microphones would pick up the room sound. So stick indicated I hit the drum and it went splat. It didn't go boom. It didn't have any resonance.
Mm.
I'd only been in the band about 9 months, and uh, my sort of attitude when I met new people was, well, unless somebody asks me something, I'm not going to volunteer anything. And nobody asked, if somebody had said, why do the drums sound like that? I
Mhm.
would, let's put them in the room. But that wasn't a popular sound at the time, like big crashing drums. Zeppelin did it. If you listen to the first Zeppelin record, and of course Phil Collins, the other groups did do it as it started getting live sound, and then in the '80s it became a thing. But Stick came about because we just couldn't get the drum to resonate, and so there's that very famous film clip of they talk about the torture of Born to Run. Not so much for the band because we did all those tracks, Bruce, Roy, Gary, and myself, in about 2 weeks. And I have copies of those with nothing on it, and they are about the cleanest tracks you ever heard. And that was directly the influence of John Landau coming in and literally within a couple of weeks at this little warehouse we rehearsed in Neptune, New Jersey, coming in and streamlining what we were doing. Because the first two records were not tracked. They may add a guitar, make everything stack up, put a vocal on, but the band was basically playing live in the studio.
Mhm.
And John had a lot more experience than everybody in making records, and particularly with sort of his tutelage from Jerry Wexler,
Mm.
who's the great Atlantic record man, Atlantic Records. So he broke it down into just we're going to do tracks. So we did that. And some of the vocals, well, Bruce always sang along, and some he repeated, later on, put the guitars on. But it was basically drums, piano, and bass. Cleanest tracks you ever heard. You could hear Backstreets with nothing on it but, you know, bass, drums, and piano. And that's the way it was recorded. So, what has stayed the same over the 45 years, as you say, I'll take it on faith that it was 45 years between Born to Run and Letter to You, was the commonality of our musical roots, the fact that I mean, we used to spend hours, I mean, 10 hours a day in the studio, mostly rehearsing and recording. So a lot of what you hear, in my view, uh, in a lot of ways is, he'd write a song, we'd go in and record it. He'd write another, and then we'd go out and watch a baseball game. And he'd write 5 songs and we'd go in and record them.
Mm.
So a lot of those records were they weren't rehearsed to death. They were just, we got really good as a live band.
Mm.
Um, and so then obviously we took a break. I myself, only speaking for myself, the challenge of being a music director and band leader on major network TV made me a much, much better drummer and musician because several times a week I was faced with playing with people I didn't know. music that we heard briefly, and you had to get your act together quick. It made me a much, much better drummer. It honed my music reading ability to where, in fact, in the letter to you, Doc, that Tom Zimney made, you can see us like,
Right, writing.
little scribbles,
Mm.
Gary, who's from Nashville, lives in Nashville, has the Nashville way of writing music, which is you just put numbers down. So in country songs and rock songs. But I can pretty quickly write actual notes and, I can read it. I don't know if anybody else can read it.
Mhm.
Mm.
And so it makes everything go very much quicker. But the energy, the intensity, the feeling of this is important. That has never changed. Bruce has a lot of maxims, not to be punny about it. And one of them is a question. Why do they call it a record? Pretty good question. His answer was to me, they call it a record because it lasts forever. It's a
Mm.
record what you did at that moment. You're
Good
making,
one.
why do they call it a concert? It's not it is us doing something, but you're in concert. I mean, I'm sure he's explained it many times, but that's how he explained it to me. You're in concert with the audience. You become one organism. So what we brought to the process between those two albums was thousands and thousands of hours of playing together. Um, in the early days, being together 24/7, knowing everybody's habits and foibles, and the miracle of a rock and roll band staying together for, well, in Gary's case, what, 56 years, something like that. It's astounding. It astounds us all to this day. And the interesting thing about recording Later to You was he brought out um, If I Was a Priest,
Mhm.
Mm.
right? And Janie Needs a Shooter. The Janie Needs a Shooter, particularly, was there was some sort of demo, I guess, that he made, and we all had to put ourselves back into 1977, recording in our heads, recording that.
Hmm.
And that was actually pretty easy to kind of go back to what I played like
Hmm.
then, but with more finesse, more maturity, more wisdom, which is what you hope. You want to retain the power, but you want to gain as much finesse as you can. So, but the way we play in the studio, I'll tell you a funny thing was when we got together for the first night of the recording of the album, The Rising. I was doing the Conan show, and I would fly down there on a Friday after the show, and we'd record Friday night late, Saturday, Sunday, and then I'd fly back Monday. Did the whole record in 7 weeks. And the first song we recorded was The Rising.
Hmm.
And it was Bruce, Gary, me, and Roy. And we did it tracking. And we went, and the way Brendan O'Brien works, amazing, his team. You go in and listen to it, and it sounds like a finished record. And they were quite amused at that first time in watching us play that we were all in there together. And apparently, most of what they had done was where the drummer comes in and records the drums, and then the bass player puts on the. So everybody did their own part. There was some talk from some of the younger tape operators. They'd never actually seen a band together in the studio.
That's funny.
So
Mm.
it makes you feel old, but that's how we did it. We came up very, very old school and just working at it until you got it. I've had many conversations with, I don't want to name drop here, but my hero of all time, Ringo, about their process, and you can see it in that new movie of that Peter Jackson did, where just the working out and the how one little riff becomes something else and some other song. And I can remember in the studio a lot of chicken dinners while Bruce was eating. I mean, when he was writing, eating. He'd just sit down, and it was unbelievable. He would just come out with this. He'd sit in the corner, his notebooks, and he just start to write. And he has beautiful writing, and I'm and I've and he holds his pencil. It wasn't pencil or pen, very very lightly. When I'm like like this when I write, like after
Mm,
about 5 minutes, I can't. I don't hold the drumsticks like that. Um, it very perfectly, written, and it's look, a big inspiration, obviously, to all of us. But we finally did get the drum sound by accident. One of the records we listened to over and over again was by the Raspberries, "Overnight Sensation,"
Hmm.
during the recording of Darkness. And we couldn't get that sound because again, now I was out in the room, but we still didn't get that sound.
Hmm.
We had more of a kind of dead sound. So he hadn't we rehearsed Darkness, we didn't record it. And it was a slightly different arrangement in my memory. And so we took a break, and then Bruce decided he wanted to record it. And at the record plant, the studio, I think it was A, where we had made most of that record, was booked. So he said, "Well, let's go into another studio." So Studio B, well, you can't use Studio B. We deconstructed it. And Bruce said, "What do you mean?" "Well, it's down to the concrete and bare walls, and it's not ready to play in." "Well, we'll go in there and see what we get." And we've got as I said, the gobos. So we go in there and I set up the drums in basically this concrete box, and I hit the snare, and suddenly there's the sound.
hmm.
You hear that if you listen to Proven All Night on Darkness and then listen to Darkness on the Edge of Town, you'll see the difference because Darkness was the only song that was recorded in Studio B where it was just concrete walls.
Oh, wow.
And I have one other inside thing to tell you about Darkness. I only did it one time, and it was the take. We did it a few times. But I think I don't know how much of the original vocal is, maybe all of it, but I did this little triplet thing, the quarter note triplet at the end on the record. And I only did it one time, and that was the take he used.
Mm,
Mm.
It goes boom, 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 crack. And to me, it's like what takes like 2 seconds. To me, it was
mm.
the greatest moment on record. It's the thing I'm proud of. In all the records we've made and that I've made on my own, I just love that little 2 second thing at the end. We don't do it live that way. It's bigger, bigger.
Mhm.
All right,
So
Howie.
you get me started, you might not be able to stop me.
No, well,
Love
that's
it.
the thing.
Hey.
Well, so I'm looking at the comments here. So the common thing here is, Max, is that everyone wants you to write another book. Okay, so okay, that's the thing. Max, please write a book. Please write a book. Please write a book. So just putting it out there. I'm just gonna follow up on a couple. You've answered a lot, actually. I mean, about things that I was gonna ask you, but I'm so glad you put it better than I would have asked. But there is some things. Well, we had your son Jay on the show about a month and a half ago, and he was phenomenal. We were talking about, the progression and not just getting into the drums and following suit, but I guess the biggest question I wanted to ask for you is that so you've been in the band and this is it's your baby and whatever, and then what is it like to have your son play, in 2009 he starts taking over and while you're out and he's playing in your spot. I mean, as a father, as a musician, and I know what he has told us, but what being Bruce being so demanding, okay, and what you had to go through, you know, and now you're throwing him into the fire, and not just like taking, recording. He's going into live shows, and now he's got to do what you do, and whether you're a Spring Nut or whether you're a Springsteen fan or whatever, it's a tough gig, So, what was the advice? What was the whole thought process?
I've never given Jay any advice about the drums. He's completely self-taught. The only thing I ever told him was don't hold the sticks tightly because that would lead to hand problems. That's all I ever said. But everybody in any job always thinks they're irreplaceable, right? And you
Hmm.
run the risk of being replaced. But the bittersweetness of being replaced by your son?
I can't even imagine.
No, I was absolutely. over the moon, excited for him and thrilled. And the whole way it came about, I don't know what he talked about exactly, but it was so organic and natural that it was a beautiful thing. And, he's just one of the world's top drummers now.
Hmm.
And, he just had a baby 9 weeks
Yeah,
ago,
congratulations to you,
a
grandfather.
girl who'll be 30, makes me feel 36 next week. Uh, Incredible drummer, always, but he played hockey in Red Bank for
Hmm.
many years. And the discipline it takes to become a goalie really aided him in teaching himself how to play the drums. I mean, he went from playing nothing, not being able to play the drums, to really quickly being really good. Sat in with a band called the Bouncing Souls, and I have it on video. And
Hmm.
I think he was about 14 at Asbury Lanes. And he,
Hmm.
so, you know, when I had this conflict with doing the Tonight Show and our tour starting in you'll have to give me the name of the tour in
It was,
2009,
it was, it was magic.
Working on a dream. Working on a
working on
dream.
a dream.
I was working on a dream.
Our
Okay.
scheduling got kind of bollocksed up, and uh, the Tonight Show was a big deal to do that, and Bruce has always been such a big supporter of all of our stuff that we've done outside of the E Street Band, and then Conan again also was a tremendous supporter of what I was fortunately being able to do with Bruce and the E Street Band. But we had the scheduling conflict, and I can remember, maybe Jay told you this story, but I was driving him back to school. He went to Stevens Tech in Hoboken, from which he graduated with honors, I might add. Uh, tough school, New Jersey's MIT.
Ah,
Driving him back, my phone rang. It was Bruce. He wanted Jay's number. And I said, well, he's right here sitting next to me. I'll give you the phone. I gave him the phone, and he starts talking, and all I'm hearing from Jay is, yeah, 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 sounds good. Oh, yeah, 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 I think so. I think so. And then I hear this big, you know, effing yeah.
He
And
didn't
then
tell it
he
this
hands me back
that
the,
way.
he hands me back the phone. Bruce is gone. I said, what was that about? And Jay may have told you this story, but he said, well, Bruce called and he said, Jay, this is Bruce Springsteen. Now, you got to remember, when Jay was really little, both my kids, they knew Bruce and Jeanette as Evan, Jesse, and Sam's parents. I'd been
Mhm.
doing TV. They didn't really know much, or if anything, about the E Street Band. There was no memorabilia or anything in my house, our house. So, and Jay and Evan are the same age. So he said, well, he said, this is Bruce Springsteen. And you may have heard I have a band. I'm like, I've got the greatest drummer in rock in my band, and
Mm.
had a bit of a schedule problem.
Mm.
So my drummer said, give my son a call. He's pretty good. So Jay, I'm calling you to ask you if you'd like to join the E Street Band. That's
Wow.
how he put it. And that's when Jay said effing yeah. So when we were rehearsing for the Super Bowl in New York, Bruce came in one day. We rehearsed a couple of days of that medley. We did
Yeah.
um he came in with a scratch piece of paper with about 150 songs on it and said, give this to Jay, ask him to get started. And I gave it to Jay, and just as he does in school, did in school and did in hockey, he starts in on it. And this, whether it was me or anybody else, and he was in college at the time.
Wow.
He was only 18. This was a big order to fill, and he learned those songs. He must have told you about the first time I went up to check out what he was doing. If he
We
did,
want to hear we want to hear your version of it.
Yeah.
well, my version was he was playing, he had 150 songs to learn.
Right.
So his version, I'm sure, is similar to mine in that, I was listening. I said, well, that's not quite the way I do it. I'll try it.
Hmm.
Dad, this is like you teaching me driving a car.
Exactly the same story.
I have to figure it out on my own. So what I did was I gave him a CD of Sam and Dave's greatest hits. I said, if you listen and you embrace this and internalize it, you will know basically everything you need to know about playing with Bruce and the E Street Band. And he did. He really did. And um, there's this one very funny family story that happened. We're sitting around eating dinner as he was getting ready to do this. And and he said, gee, that, Born to Run's funny. It's got that, middle section where there's 9 bars there. I said, what are you talking about? What 9 bars? He goes, in that second solo, the guitar solo, there's 9 bars. I said, hey, Jay, I've been playing this for 30, it's 8 bars. No, I'm telling you, it's 9 bars. Jay, come on. You've been doing this 3 weeks. I've been doing this my entire adult life. He goes, how much you want to bet? And I said, I'll bet you $10. It's 8 bars. It's not 9 bars. So, all right, so we put it on and we're counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. Damn, if it wasn't 9 bars.
Oh my
Right.
God.
And so right, he didn't say anything, but he's also a chess player. And you get done, you win, you go to the guy and you shake his hand. That's what he did. And he shook his hand, then he opened his hand for the $10. That was kind of funny. But he did an unbelievable job. And I'll tell you something that happened on, I think it was uh, it may have been in 23. If not, it was on the River Tour, where, the song Back in My Arms. We don't play it that often. But we played it this one night. It may have been in 23. I'm not sure. Like I said, we don't play it that often. And there's a lot of like, hit me, boom, don't want to miss those.
Hmm.
And so we played it that night and we're going home afterwards and we're all on the plane and we're chatting and we kind of do a post-mortem, every 4 or 5 shows, what happened, how was it, and all this. Particularly the long-standing guys been there for 50 years. And so anyway, he says, wow, that Back of My Arms, that sounded really good tonight. And we're all kind of beaming. He goes, yeah, it was good. But, the best we ever played that was at Pink Pop in whatever it was, 1999 or 2009. And I realized, and I said, Ruth, that was Jay. That was Jay? Yeah, Jay. So
Ouch.
your X on that one. And
Oh
so
wow.
that and No Radio Nowhere, that's his song.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But as a
fantastic.
father, and as a drummer, it's just a blessing to have seen him grow,
Yeah.
to get that experience. Um, when you're on stage with Bruce Springsteen, he doesn't care if you're 17 or 70. He
Mm.
does what he does the way he does it. And it's the best seat in the house, but it can also be a hot seat.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's like a graduate course in how to respond and to act like a true musician, and showman, and you know, don't be looking at your watch. Don't take your watch on stage. I don't wear a watch, but things like that. When you're on that stage, that's sacred ground. And I'll tell you, I don't know if anybody's ever mentioned this, but if you suddenly got dropped on the stage while we were playing, you would feel like a number of things. You wouldn't believe how loud Bruce's guitar is.
Mm.
You wouldn't believe how loud and powerful the band is, and
Mhm.
you wouldn't believe how relaxed it is.
Wow.
It's an incredible thing, how relaxed it is. And that's taken decades. I mean, in the early days, we played like a bat out of hell, to coin a phrase,
Mm.
just everything fast and intense. And, we'd be playing 2 shows a night, 5, 6 nights a week, driving ourselves in a car, you
Mm.
know, and when you're 24, 25 years old, you can stay up for 3 days and you got all the energy in the world. So the fact that we're still able to bring that, both the energy, the discipline, the weight of all those years in forming his music, that is and what my people call a mitzvah. That's a true blessing.
I love the mitzvah.
Amen.
Absolutely is.
So my last question for you, and it's more of like I've actually spoken to you in the past about this, but I think it's something that the viewers should understand. So, because like one of the things that makes you different than other drummers in my view, and I know I'm speaking for a lot of the fans out there, is that it's not just like most drummers are playing their music and whatnot, and they got their things down and whatever, but you constantly from the first minute you're on that stage till you walk off that stage, you need to be focused on Bruce, not just playing the song, but you need to be focused on what Bruce is, like you mentioned before, his movements, his, because it's part of the interaction, it's part of the song. I mean, how hard is that to do that, especially when you're playing shows that are 3 and 4 hours, and and he's calling audibles and he did this and things are changing up and what, but you need and also it's his feeling, it's what he's feeling in the moment. It's not always a set thing. It's something that he may be feeling at the moment. All of a sudden he's shaking his elbow, whatever you were describing before, his elbow, this, that, and you got to be constant. Instead of watching what you're doing, you're watching him. How hard is that to do that on a nightly? To how focused you are. That's what I think what makes you different than most drummers is that how focused you are in not skipping a beat on your playing, but at the same time not skipping a beat on what Bruce wants from you when he's doing it, in his movements.
That's my job. It's actually very simple to explain. That's the job. And that's why I got the job. It'll be 53 years ago because that was my orientation. It's not about me. It's not about my drumming. Watching me on the Conan show, drumming like that would be completely inappropriate. I come from the school of it's the singer and the song
Mm,
and show bands where there's a lot of stage business. And way before, I met Bruce and everybody. So it's for me, it's uh, when you're on tour, we just came off this 20, very short tour, 20 dates, Land of Hope and Dreams, America,
hmm
No Kings, which was a unbelievably rewarding experience.
hmm
And it was the same thing every night. It was like a Broadway show.
hmm
That allows you, it's an interesting thing. That allows you to get very, very deep into the material because you're playing it. It's like a,
Right.
it's the same thing. And I think that was a result of he came in the first day, and I think Steve has said this, with the set, that was it. He knew what he wanted to play, knew what he wanted to say, uh and we just went at it and we didn't rehearse very much. As he says, we've been rehearsing for 50 years. We don't really we know how to play Bruce Springsteen music, and that's a big part of it. I've often said that the heart of my drumming is I really only know two beats. They just happen to be the two beats that Bruce Springsteen wanted to.
Wow.
And it's a distillation and simplification, but it's kind of true. So, I have a job up there, and it's one of the things that allows me to not get tired.
Mm,
I'm engaged all the time. My center of focus, if you were in my optic nerve, all you would see would be mostly Bruce's butt, but you would see Bruce. That's it. That's all I see. I don't see the audience. I don't see anybody else in the band. I'm just hooked up to him. I
wow.
listen, I listen to what he's doing. I I'm prepared for what he does, but even more so, my job is to be prepared for what he might do without committing. So the millisecond,
Mm,
as he said in that passage you wrote, the sixth sense that if it is that we have together, that he knows that he said on Howard Stern, it was a lovely thing. He said that, I have his back,
mm,
back. That's the idea, and that's what the great drummers who, and I don't mean great in the sense of, fantastic technicians, but the drummers who have made a name for themselves, like um, Irv Kotler, who played live with Sinatra for almost 60 years, who was the best big band singer, drummer. He wasn't a Buddy Rich, and Buddy was, of course, Buddy Rich.
mm.
But Irv, it was Sinatra's favorite drummer to sing behind because they had that kind of simpatico.
Mhm.
And that's what you need. I'm not a big basketball fan, but my manager, Mark Stein, is, and he read in the Chicago paper, the rock writer said, I didn't know what it meant at the time. He explained it to me. It was a great compliment. He said, I am to Bruce as Scottie Pippen was to Michael Jordan.
That's
Wow.
a great,
Yeah.
great.
Well, I didn't know what
I
that meant
love
until
that.
he explained it to
Oh,
me.
I'm a
And
big basketball fan,
I
but
mean, I knew
that's
how great Michael Jordan was, but it's sort of like, hey, I'm in service of Bruce and the band and make what they do. The drummers are like the sheet rockers, and the guys who come in and put the molding on. We try to cover up the rough edges a little bit, and you know, by pickups, one, two, bam, ba,
mm,
bam, give people something to grab onto when they hit the downbeat. It's a lot like being a goalie. Now, I've never been a goalie, but Jay's been both. He said it's exactly the same. You know, you're there as the last line of defense.
mm,
Very often that means, giving everybody all the time. It means giving the people in the band what they need. And that's the way I approach everything. When I play with my group, the jukebox,
mm,
same thing. It's not about me doing a drum solo. I mean, if I went there and played Wipeout for an hour,
mm,
it would drive people insane, and nobody would want to see that. That's why I continually play. This sort of pre-Labor Day thing I do with the pony, as you mentioned earlier, is
mm,
kind of it's what keeps me drumming. I set up the drums myself, do the sound check, work with the lights. It's no fun at my age to sit and, practice out of books. I did that. I did that a lot. I
mm,
like playing with people. I like an audience. I like to tell jokes sometimes that
mm.
usually they're not funny, but I like to tell them. And, it's sort of an evening with me and the music that I grew up with and the music I like to play. I had an unbelievable experience, if I might tell you about it the other night. So my son Jay's favorite band is King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard, and they're Australian. And he's been raving about them for 2 years. He got friendly with them. They sought him out actually because he's a very, he's a
Mhm.
much better drummer than me and infinitely more well known among young people than I am. And he was playing with a group in Australia, and they got a hold of Jay. We became great friends. They're wonderful people, fantastic touring party. So I played in Atlantic City the other night at the Hard Rock, and they played at Forest Hill Stadium. They were playing a couple of nights there. I think they hold the record. If you've never heard of this band, check them out.
Wow.
Incredible. I mean, they are the most unique aggregation of musicians I've ever seen. They played 28 albums
Wow.
in the Wizard Lizard, and it's very modern, very new. So Jay has sat in with them a lot. So he called me. He said, "Gee, you ought to go see him. You're in New Jersey. They're playing in Forest Hills. I've never been to Forest Hill Stadium. I always wanted to go there because the Beatles played there,
Mhm.
and
Mm,
it's in the middle of a neighborhood. This stadium. It was a tennis stadium, and in the '60s, I guess, and even the '50s, they started having shows there. Anyway, so I said, "Yeah, I could do that. I'm not playing the next night. This was this past Friday." And so I drove out there and they asked me to sit in. And this is challenging music. So they had this one song called Hot Water, which was, challenging, but I figured, I mean, their music's really complicated. They do one song in 17/8. And I'd never seen them. I hadn't heard them play. The nicest guys you'd ever want to meet. And we just kind of ran it down in the dressing room. I was playing on the sofa, and they're all in one room. They're just in one
mm,
room. And I go out there, and there's 16,000 people there. And suddenly, one of the guys introduces me, and this is kind of like a rave up.
mm,
This is
mm.
cutting edge. What's happening now? They were on the cover of Rolling Stone not long ago, and they're one
Wow.
of the biggest new bands out there. Big, huge. And I sat down at the guy's drums, and we played this song for 12 minutes. They
12
basically they're
minutes.
yeah, they're kind of a jam band, but they've got echoes of the Allman Brothers, Zeppelin,
Oh, wow.
real jazz, like John Coltrane,
Mm,
I mean, electronica, incredibly diverse. And They're from Australia, so I
What's
think
the name of the band again, Max?
they're called King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizards.
King Gizzard. Okay.
It
King
sounds like
Gizzard.
they would have been
No,
in the
that's
Blinded
Gizzard.
by the Light song.
And King Gizzard, I've been raving about them for a long time, and he was absolutely right. They were awesome, and it was really fun because I'm old enough to be some of their grandfather. Oh,
Mm.
when is someone like my age going to play with a bunch of young guys like this? And it was. In fact, there was one of their father-in-laws there whose first concert when he was 17 was us, Australia, at a sort of like some sort of track and field kind of small stadium back in 1985. It was his first concert, and that
Wow.
was in the 60s. And you know, and he was like, man, it was, we were talking about that concert and us playing in Australia for the first time. And, we're all very sorry we didn't get to be in Australia on this last, tour, either the Letter to You or, someday.
Mm.
But yeah, it was, so I just feel if you keep your ears open, you look for opportunities. I'm always playing. I play about 4 or 5 times a month out. There's no trappings. It's a party. It's not a concert. People are involved. And we're playing at the Stone Pony this weekend. I've got an expanded band with a fabulous keyboard player named Mark Bonder,
Mm.
two amazing vocalists, Lisa Sherman, Reagan Richards, Joe Belia from the Weaklings. So the Weaklings will be.
Reagan Richards from Williams Honor is playing.
Yeah.
That's great. That's
Nice.
fantastic.
Well, and we've got, in fact, my wife Becky has always been she's the music maven in
Mm.
our family, and we've been together almost, yeah, it'll be almost 50 years. Um, she's the one who pumped him full of music as a child because I was always working. And so she, about 10 years ago when we moved to Florida, she joined a band because she sings and she plays blues harp. And she's coming up to join me, and then we're going to vacation a little bit. I got some more, jobs on the East Coast. So she's going to play a couple of songs with us. So, hey, the Stone Pony, if history serves, you never know what to expect,
Hmm.
and it's fun because these are songs like we're going to play Kicks, Paul Revere and the Raiders. We all when we talk about this, the old guys in the band, rushing home from school to watch Where the Action is on TV. It was a Dick Clark show, and you see Paul Revere and the Raiders. So this
Hmm.
is stuff we grew up with playing, and it's still fun for me to do that. Hang on, Sloopy, Gloria. We play some. I also, if I hear a pop song, you know, I just the drums are always great. So I love stuff like, Breathless by the Chorus. We'll play the
Mm. Great song.
great song, Gloria by Laura Branigan and Gloria by them.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
we give you a double shot. And, so that's how you stay a musician is just by always playing. Frank Sinatra had a great quote uh, that I read, and he was asked in an interview late in life what his favorite place to play. And his response was not pejorative at all. His response was uh, a female reporter. He said, "Sweetheart, Frank Sinatra,
Yeah.
Mm.
they're all $50 dates." What he meant by that, what he meant by that was you do your best wherever you're playing. And as Bruce has said many times to us through the years, it may be the last time we ever play. It may be the first time you're seeing us play. The price of that ticket is our contract that you get the best show that we can put on that night. You get 100%, 1,000% of what we're able to do. There's no percentage because we walk down that stage at night and, one of the funny things is everybody on that stage is sitting down except me. I'm standing up because I got to sit all night. And it's such a pleasure to stand up, for a little while. If I can tell you one other Frank Sinatra story, I had the pleasure, Becky and I did a meeting him once. This isn't the story, but he looms so large in all of our histories. And, when you go to the Springsteen Center for American Music, there's a great partial exhibit on Frank Sinatra. But he defined the word entertainer. And I was Bob Santelli organized a tour in 2015, I think it was the 100th anniversary of his birth to celebrate Sinatra. And it was a traveling panel discussion. And Bob was the moderator. And on it was Nancy Sinatra, Tina Sinatra, a guy named Charlie Cravato, who runs Frank Sinatra Enterprises, Frank Sinatra Jr., and myself. And Amanda, um, what's her last? Let me see. Nancy Sinatra's second daughter, Amanda Lambert, although I think she's married. Lambert was her father's name. And she always had the last word. And she told this great story about Frank Sinatra. When she was 15, she was away at boarding school. This is when cell phones first came out. And she told this story. And her mother, Nancy Sinatra, said, look, you can't give this number to anybody. It's only for use when you want to call me or your dad. Nobody else should have this number. It's only for emergencies. So, okay, she goes to boarding school. She's doing her homework in her dorm room. Her phone is on the bed. Her roommate, the phone rings. Her roommate answers it. She says hello. And then suddenly the roommate says to Amanda, Amanda, it's your grandpa. So she answers the phone. And the first thing she says to Frank Sinatra is, Grandpa, how did you get this number?
Mm.
He goes, sweetheart, I'm Frank Sinatra. And it
Damn
brought the house
straight.
down
Damn straight.
when she said that, and then she had stories of him singing her and her sister to sleep at night. So
Mm.
pretty special. And I just like being in the continuity of American musicians who have been able to, be lucky enough to, hook up with a group of musicians led by a pioneer, someone like Bruce, who's, Jay had a funny line. He was asked in an interview about playing with Bruce, and he goes, how many times you meet in your lifetime someone like Bruce? And he paused and he said, never. That never
Mm.
happens. And it's true. And, he and I corresponded recently, and one of the lines I said was, um, I took it from Casablanca. Of all the gin joints in the world, I end up on E Street. The funny thing is, I've never been on E Street, never been in Belmar at 16th and E Street. I have
Yes.
to go there someday. But, for almost 53 years, it's been my absolute joy to play Bruce's music, to interpret it the best I can, to give him what he needs night after night, and be with the guys. And when some people this long, and the new people too, it's a fantastic touring group. You know, and one of our little backstage traditions before Bruce joins us in a circle is I'll always have a joke for the horn section. And they're usually, jokes that can't be told in mixed company, let's say.
Mm.
We're ready to go out, and I'll just, okay, have you heard this one? And, you know, and I try to make everybody, it's just a little thing I do to, get everybody relaxed. But once we hit the stage and he counts one, two, three, four, it's full bore, pedal to the metal. And, when we were doing those sort of audience requests, and as you said earlier, how we, audibles, well, you're lucky if he tells you what song it is. And sometimes I just have to use my intuition by the way he counts one, two, three, four.
Mm.
And, I'd say about 7 out of 10 times I get it right. And if I don't get it right, I just start hitting cymbals. And it
Yeah.
works its way out.
Well, actually, Anthony told a great story about you because we had Anthony Almonte on here as well, and
Anthony Almonte, yeah.
he said, he goes, Max, what happens if he calls the song? I don't know this song. He goes, oh, just pick up the tambourine and just
Marine on 2 and 4.
right.
No. Yeah, well, one of the few bands who have about 8 tambourine players. Players aren't playing. Everybody plays a tambourine. And, but again, as I said, I only am really aware of what Bruce is doing, and I have a monitor mixer who's keenly tuned into what I need. So he's mixing all night, brings in Roy, takes him out, brings him in, whatever I need to hear. And he, without, Matt Payne, my drum tech, and Troy Milner, stage right monitor guy, it would be infinitely harder. And it's hard anyway.
Hmm.
And they're as tuned in. They work as hard as I do during the show. Our entire crew does. You know, the new guys on our tour have only been there about 35 years.
Only.
I say guys, I mean men and women.
Hmm.
And it's a peak experience. And you know, when you play each show as if it's your last, there's a certain when you walk off the stage, you hold your head up high because you didn't leave anything out there.
Hmm.
Because you know it could be your last.
Max, you got a bunch of shows coming up this fall. I would suggest anybody that's watching, if you've never been to the Jukebox Show, go check it out. It's fun. The band is incredible. The rolling list of songs, and Max will come out and take requests from time to time. Max, I saw you last year in Crystal Lake, Illinois, which is like a northwest suburb, not even a suburb of Chicago. It's out there with a group of friends. The one thing that shocked me was you guys did a Bob Seger song, and I think it was Night Moves. And I'm not kidding you. This crowd was more into Night Moves than any other song that you played that night. And I was like, I guess it's because Bob's just been around for so long. Like Bruce, it's there. It's like part of people's DNA. But they sang the hardest, they sang the loudest for Night Moves. And I was just absolutely stunned.
Sure.
But it's a great night.
Yeah, there's a group of songs. Night Moves, American Girl. Everybody loves American Girl.
Hmm.
Some
Great song.
nights you get nothing but Beatle requests. Some nights you don't get any Beatle requests.
Hmm.
And if we do play a song, I don't do this all the time, but I did have an incident, or not an incident, I should say, but a wonderful little experience on the telephone with Ringo in 1985. And if you'll allow me, because this is, after all,
Absolutely.
that's
We
Cafe.
allow you to do anything here.
Yes. So I met him when I did. Jim Keltner, the great drummer, introduced us, and back in 1981, and no, it was 1980 actually. And showed the sports arena in Los Angeles. Long story short, summer of '85, we're on the phone. It's late at night, and Boss Mania, as we called it, had really taken hold of the pop and rock sensibility with Born in the USA. And it was a lot of fun. And one night we're talking, well, it was late in the morning for him, it was late at night for me. And I'm telling him, I'm saying, Ringo, you just can't believe how big Bruce has gotten. And the band is right there with him. And I'm going on. And I said, people are running after our vans. And there's people are waiting at the airports and at the hotels. And I'm going on and on about how big the act had become and how many records we've sold in stadiums. And he's listening to the whole thing, listening to my entire speech, and I'm practically out of breath. I stop, and I won't imitate him, but he's got this very deep Liverpudlian baritone accent. He says, well, Max, that's all fine, but you must always remember I was in the Beatles.
Exactly.
I'm
Drop,
going to
drop the
say,
mic.
absolutely true. And that puts everything into perspective.
Stan?
Max,
It's sad.
talk about legendary venues. I see on your jukebox schedule, you're playing the Whiskey A Go-Go in LA. Have you ever played there before? Have you ever been there before? I know you played the Roxy down the street, so that's got to be exciting.
Yeah, that's why we're doing it. We're playing in about an hour outside of Los Angeles in Corona, California, which is east of Los Angeles. And I said, well, I know the whiskey is still there. I was out there not long ago, playing with Bruce, and I did play there once. We all did. We played at our wonderful lighting designer, our original lighting designer, Mark Brickman's wedding,
Hmm.
which must have been in 79 or 80. We took the stage there. It's a legendary venue. It's exactly the same as it was. So I said to Mark Stein, my manager, see if they're still, booking bands there. I'd love to play there. So yeah, I'm playing the Whiskey a Go-Go. And some of the greatest gigs we've ever had with the jukebox have been at the most out of the way places, you know, which is what I do. Yes, we play New York, Chicago, Phoenix, Atlanta, Nashville, occasionally LA, San Francisco. But also I played, Green Lake, Wisconsin,
Hmm.
as you said, out in Illinois. And, I remember that audience in Green Lake, Wisconsin was in the Green Lake Opera House. And it was a Saturday night. And those people in Green Lake, Wisconsin know how to party. Enjoyed it. At my jukebox shows, you don't sit down, you stand up. I will embarrass you into standing up. And we hope that the energy of the music and the fact that everybody knows every song. These are songs that people grew up with. I don't care, even if, if you're in your 30s, your parents played you these songs as the repertoire of their lives. So, um, it's a fun night, and it's become this thing at the Stonies, at the Stone Pony. So last year, we were booked to play outside on the summer stage, and we sold just under 4,500 tickets for that. And it's a great, great outdoor stage. And that morning, they said, well, it could be some rain. There wasn't just rain. There was rain of biblical proportions. There was thunderstorms. There was lightning. So they came to us and they said, we're going to have to cancel the show. And I said, well, it happened to be the night of the day we did the Born to Run anniversary symposium, where Boone Carter was there, David Sanchez was there, and it was that night and just pouring rain. So I said, well, let's bring it inside. Well, we can only fit 900 people. So that's, 800, 1,800 people, 4,400 people or so bought tickets. Some people, unfortunately, not going to get in. We ended up playing inside 3 2-hour shows. We didn't get done until 2:45 in the morning.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And it was a blast. I think we set the record for minutes played, at that show. I mentioned the Born to Run symposium. Here's a tidbit that your viewers and listeners might enjoy. There's this, is it an urban myth? But I once said in an interview, I think it was when they released the to Run box set, that there was this little lick that Boone Carter did in Born to Run that I couldn't do, that I took out. And then technically it's called a paradiddle. And paradiddle is one of the first things you learn. I learned the song Born to Run, which Boom played on brilliantly. I have the drum, I have the what they call the stems. I have just the drum part. That's a trip to listen to just that. Now, I didn't get that at the time, and I try to honor both what Vinny and Boom played, my predecessors. So anyway, right at the first, I took out the lick because it just it didn't quite go with the flow of the song at that point when I learned it in 1974. And it hadn't been recorded yet. It was recorded, but it wasn't released. So I took it out. And then, I never played it. And it always became sort of, it wasn't like Bruce didn't tell me to play it. Just, I kind of straightened it up. So Boom was at this thing. And I said, Boom, how did you come up with that lick? He said, well, I was listening to the guitar, and that's what Bruce was playing. So he played along with Bruce. And, Boom was a fabulous drummer, great jazz drummer, really a tremendous, feel and just nice touch. And so we're playing that. And I said, look, when we get to that point in the song, we're both playing drums in that song. Take it. I'm going to stop. Just play that lick. And, we didn't tell anybody else we were going to do that. So we did that. I stopped, and Boom played his lick in the second solo. And it was just a little great moment between Boom and myself. And so, we were all backstage talking afterwards, and Bruce said, I heard it. That was cool. That was a nice moment.
Yeah.
So a lot of those little things.
So he remembered it.
Yeah.
Well, he heard it. Oh, Boom, of course. Yeah, Boom remembered the lick. Bruce,
But I'm saying Bruce remembered the lick too.
and occasionally I'll throw it in just to, I play it and Steve will look back and, a lot of the drum fills I do, I know they'll get Steve's attention because he's a real big fanatic on sort of the classic fills, the history of rock drumming, as you know, rock music in general.
They show a video of you and Boom playing Born to Run at the Springsteen Center in the room upstairs where they show video clips. So I'm going to check that out next time I'm there to watch for that part that you talk.
I was at the ribbon cutting, and I had a gig that night in Chicago, so I only took a quick breezed through the whole museum. I was there about an hour. So this weekend, I'm going to go there and spend some serious time.
Yeah.
And my wife and I are about 8 or 9 months ago, we're asked, and we're delighted to be the sort of honorees, I guess you would call it, at the Kristen
Yeah.
Park dinner that's being held on November 7th. And we're delighted. And it's, a very, very sad time because of
Yeah.
the Kristen and her sister, and then Dave, of course, for
Mm.
Barbara, and our hearts are with her. It's very poignant, but one of the things they're doing is, they always have an auction. So one of the auction pieces is a signed bass drum head of mine, sticks, picture, a meet and greet, and I'm going to be a docent
Hmm.
That's
Center for
cool.
American Music. So, and I do know quite, I'm a sort of a rock history buff and music history generally. So, if you talk about the original jazz drummer, Zutty Singleton and Baby Dodds from New Orleans, I can talk about those guys. They influenced Chick Webb, who influenced Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich, and it goes on from there. So it's just a continuum. And so yeah, I'm going to be a docent. Look out for that. That's going to be pretty
Yeah,
good.
November 7th, 2026, 7 to 11 p.m. It's on Lafayette Street. I have it up here. Big event. It's always a great, great thing to do, the Kristen Ann Carr Fund event. So please, please spring nuts out there. If you're watching, go to kristenanncarr.com, I'm sorry, .org, and you will see it and get your tickets for this event.
And that auction is live too, because I looked at that yesterday. Oh, that's
It
cool.
is. Oh,
Yep. Yep.
good.
Well, Max,
Well,
you answered my second question was going to be about playing with Boom, so you answered that. So I'm going to turn it over to Jewlie, who will wrap things up for us.
Yeah, Julie
Julie,
is,
hi.
we saved the best for last, but the prettiest
You
for
look like
last.
you're at my house in Florida.
Was that an invitation? I mean,
You're in the area,
That's a mistake.
I love
and you're
Florida.
making me homesick. I'm in New Jersey. But what can I say? What can I tell you, Julie?
Okay, so we do a little thing here on the Spring Nut Cafe that we're going to call the Spring Nut Shuffle, which is a bunch of rapid fire, like a lightning round ish.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so get your head together. You're going to have to get some quick answers here, but no pressure. Okay, so I'm gonna toss some softballs from the beginning. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Okay, good. You're a good man, Max. Me too. Favorite pizza topping?
Favorite what?
Pizza topping.
Pizza.
Marinara sauce and cheese.
Straight up guy. One bite. I got it. Okay.
Folded, not set.
Folded. That's right. Jersey, baby. Okay, chicken soup with or without matzo ball?
I like both. I like both, and I like my matzo balls to be as hard as a baseball. They last.
Okay, I'll take that on, I'll remember that one. Beatles or Stones?
Both. That's on the Dave Clark Five. Big influences, but the Beatles at the time, well, it's hard. Beatles, Stones, and Dave Clark Five, and people don't remember this, but the Dave Clark Five for a while was as big as the Beatles, and it was the DC Five versus the Beatles, and it's hard to pick. It's hard to pick one.
Okay, it's you on a desert island with 3 albums. What are they?
Sandy Nelson, Let There Be Drums. Buddy Rich, Live at Ciro's. And The River by Bruce Springsteen.
Oh,
Wow.
nice.
Is it because of the type? Is it because of the drum roll on
Island.
Hungry Heart?
That's my summer driving around with the window and the top down song album.
Nice. Very nice. Okay. Greatest live performer you have ever seen?
From the front or the back?
Even I knew you opened that door.
From the front. From the front.
Well, the obvious, of course, but I had the great pleasure of seeing James Brown in Newark, New Jersey in 1964. With a friend of mine, we took the bus down Springfield Avenue
Mhm.
down to there was a movie theater there, and he had his big orchestra, and it was the most exciting. I was 13. It was the most exciting thing I'd ever seen. And so when you ask me that question, certainly from the front, James Brown and his famous Flames and his orchestra. He had two drummers.
Really?
It was unbelievable.
And your mother went let you go to that at 13, huh?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the, as I said earlier, that's the you go to a show, let's go to a show anytime, any time of the day. Let's
Love
go to a show.
love it. Most underrated musician.
Most underrated musician in terms of the instrument or
Um, just in general, I guess. Somebody who you think should have gotten more due than they
oh, um, wow. That's hard. That's hard because generally if you've heard of somebody, they've done something. But I'll reference this little kid I saw on a corner in Kingston, Jamaica, when Becky and I were on vacation, who literally had a drum set made out of paint tubs and cans and was burning through that stuff. He
got.
had to be 9 years old.
Wow.
I don't know his name. I don't know what became of him, but I stood there transfixed.
Wow. Very cool. New York or New Jersey?
Well, New Jersey, and let me tell you a story connected with that. In the 60s and 70s, if you were a musician from the tri-state area, it's pretty popular to say you were from New York. And I was born in Newark, went to Maplewood, grew up in South Orange in that area. And, so when I auditioned for the band, even though I was working in New York, and I didn't know this till later, but Bruce wanted to know where everybody lived, and people would say, drummers would say, "Well, I'm a New York musician." So he asked me where I lived, and I said, New Jersey. And he looked at me, he goes, "That's good." It was the right answer. And I didn't know him at all. I didn't know at all. But
I love it.
yeah, New Jersey's got everything.
Mhm.
And it's got two of the best house bands in the world, between Bruce and Bon Jovi. We've got it covered.
And don't forget about the Gaslight Anthem. Do you like them?
Yes, I do.
We're big fans. Huge. Huge. Let's see. So do you have a favorite pizza place in Jersey?
Do I have a favorite pizza place in New Jersey? Uh, I like Federici's. I go back to Freehold when I'm in Jersey, but I do live in Florida now.
Mm.
So Florida's mostly people from New Jersey
Yeah.
and New York. So you have quite a good cross section.
But the water's different, so the pizza tastes different, and the bagels taste different.
Yeah, the water's blue down there. And I know when I played in Atlantic City, the water's not quite blue. I don't remember it, but it's still New Jersey.
Okay. Allie or Jay? Just kidding.
In what sense? Allie was the first East Street Offspring to play with us when she was 12 years old.
Really?
And she killed it. She's a wonderful pianist. She's an incredible journalist with PBS NewsHour.
Yep.
Worked her way up through working at the White House, and incredibly proud of her.
And she wrote a great book.
She wrote a great book on
Oh,
her
yeah. Yep.
the BRCA gene and breast cancer, and I'm a survivor.
Mm.
She took protective measures for that. And Jay, of course, is not only an incredible drummer, a marvelous, unbelievable artist, a visual artist, which he does, and the sweetest guy in the world. And, I was telling somebody the other night that, when I was on TV, particularly, we had an audience of about, on an average night, 3.5, 4.5 million people. So, and your face is on TV. And the first 6 months I was on the Conan show, it was kind of like walking past an appliance store where you see yourself on TV. It was such a novelty. But walking around the streets of New York with the kids, they would always come in on a Friday and come to the studio, and they didn't watch the comedy, but if there was a band on, like the Spice Girls or, Green Day, whenever there was a band they wanted to see, they'd come right after school and, watch the show. And we'd walk out, and invariably people would recognize me. And both Allie and Jay, and they came up with this themselves, they would just say to each other, fade, just fade away, just let him do his thing. And they would fade.
That's great. That's
They
a
gave
brother
us,
sister thing.
still do, a tremendous amount of joy. When Becky and I were reminiscing the other day, we actually never took a vacation without them. So, and what was really fun when we reunited in '99, Jay was 9, Allie was 12. Allie, I think, was the oldest child. And there were a bunch, about 8 or 9 kids on tour. Bruce's, Patty's children, and Danny Federici and his late wife's children were on tour. So that was really fun. And, they still had to do their homework, but it was a wonderful way to get them to experience the world as youngsters.
Cool. Okay, if you could go back in history and see any concert, which would it be?
Well, it would have been, if I could have, it would have been the Beatles at Carnegie Hall in February of 1964. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you 2 Beatles stories if we have the time. You tell me.
We always have time.
In 1964, Sid Bernstein booked them for 2 shows at Carnegie Hall. And it was sold out. And it was I had played Carnegie Hall a few times, and it's Carnegie Hall, it's cool. And they were so sold out, they had to set up chairs on the stage for, I guess you would call them sort of VIP guests. So about 4 years ago, I met a guy who was a cousin of one of my dear friends in Florida, and we're having dinner. And he was about 3 or 4 years older than me. And he goes, we're talking about music, and well, he saw the Beatles. I said, really? You saw the Beatles? Where'd you see the Beatles? He said, I was at Carnegie Hall in February of 1964. So the Beatles played Washington Coliseum, and then they went back to New York to play at Carnegie Hall. I said, you're kidding. He said, yeah, my mother knew somebody who knew somebody. He was 16 or 17. And I said, well, what was it like? He said, well, it was great. And one of the reasons it was great, I was a little old for the Beatlemania thing, but we happened to be sitting in these chairs, these folding chairs that they set up on the stage. I said, you're kidding. So there's a picture of him and his mother and the Beatles. He was literally 10 feet away from Ringo's Starr.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
If you read Beatle literature, the first 2 tours they loved. 66 was a little, it was kind of over for them. Even the Shea Stadium was only a third full of people. But he got to see the Beatles. I would have liked to have seen that one. On the other hand, in April of 1966, my girlfriend at the time, I was in 9th grade, her father was what they used to call a rack jobber. A rack jobber was a guy who would buy wholesale records, and he would go into the 5 and 10, and they'd have racks,
Yeah.
5 and 10s in record stores in the front of the store, and they'd fill them with 45s and in some cases albums. He was the guy that did that. Long story short, WABC, he got 4 tickets to see the Beatles at Shea Stadium, August 23rd, 1966, for my girlfriend and I and 2 of her friends.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. I was gonna finally see the Beatles. So,
Uh-oh. I don't like the way this is
well,
starting to sound.
April of 66. So I went to summer camp. She stayed home. So 2 days before the concert, I get a letter. And she writes, Dear Max, don't take this personally, but I met this guy at this swim club, and
Nice.
and I had a copy of a Xerox. That's how long ago it was. A Xerox copy of the tickets, and they were right behind the dugout at first base.
Oh my God.
And don't take this personally, no offense, but I'm going to go to the concert with this guy I met over the summer.
Ouch.
After I was in a cabinet camp, and after recovering from punching the wall, I can't remember, I was what, 15. Well, I figured, okay, they'll play next year or someplace. I'll see the Beatles. It turned out to be the third to last show they ever played. So I never got to see the Beatles.
Wow.
And some guy from Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. We met my girlfriend over the summer.
Wow.
Needless to say, she ceased being my girlfriend that moment. Um, she went to the Beatle concert, and the screaming thing was kind of over. So I almost saw the Beatles. Steve went to see the Beatles in 1965 at Shea Stadium, and he was sitting in a place. He loves to tell this story, Steve Van Zandt. He was sitting in a place where he was like right in front of speakers, so he could really hear them. And he said they sounded exactly like the record.
Oh, really?
Exactly like the record. And when you see now films of them, yeah, they did sound just like the record. Well, we had a guy, I'll tell you another Beatles story. We had a guy who was our prop master for many, many years at NBC with David Letterman and then with our show, Late Night with Conan O'Brien. And when he was a young teamster, he was a lighting guy at what was called Studio 50. This was in the 50s and 60s. And he worked weekdays, and they would have these live theater. And on Sunday night was the Ed Sullivan Show from Studio 50. It's now called the Ed Sullivan Theater.
Hmm.
It's where Letterman and Colbert had their shows. And so one night he gets called in on a Sunday to sub for a guy who got sick to run the lights. He's 21, 22 years old. And it was the show that the Beatles did, the first show.
Oh my God.
Yeah, February 9th, 1964.
Wow, the serendipity of that.
Yeah, if you weren't there, if you were watching, if your life was black and white to that point, it suddenly became Technicolor. And that's what happened to all of us. The
Yeah.
other thing that people have talked about, but it bears repeating, is that, the country was in a tremendous funk, depression after the assassination of JFK and the 3 months earlier. So when the Beatles came, particularly for the young people, JFK was then and will forever be my ultimate hero. And uh, you know, I'm one of those guys who's a JFK fanatic. But anyway, the Beatles brought us out of that. And then the whole English invasion, you suddenly, as a young teenager, had something to turn to that was so positive. So next question. These are fun. I hope I'm not too long-winded with them.
No, you're
No, you're
kidding me.
Oh, I
perfect.
got
Perfect.
tons of them. Let's see. Let's see. Well, have you ever been stumped by a sign that Bruce, said we're playing this or whatever, and like really had no idea what to do?
Have I ever been stumped by a song? No. I can always figure out. That's one of the jobs of a drummer is to figure out to play something. And there's songs I haven't played and I haven't played on. Human Touch. I didn't play on that. So he's never really uh, thrown one of those at us. Without sort of. There was a song called Across. It was Across the Border or Across the.
Mhm.
Yeah, across the border.
Throw that at us. But we know how to play Bruce Springsteen music, and so the beats are simple, but they're not easy. I always say that when people ask me about the drumming because I'm sort of in the Charlie Watts and Ringo school, although nowhere near as talented as either of those guys. But it's support the singer and the song. So Bruce, if you were a young drummer and suddenly you found yourself in my seat, he really shows you he's easy to play with because he makes things, well, we have a shorthand, but if he's sitting in with a band and he's leading it, all you got to do is follow him. You know, although in the early days, just to see if we were paying attention, he would play something the same way for 30 times and then he'd change it. That was challenging. Or he'd say, give me 37, bam, 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 and you'd have to count to 37. Sometimes I listen on E Street Radio a lot. I listen to E Street Radio a lot when I'm in my car, and I'm amazed at some of the things that we were able to play, and still would be able to if we were called upon to do so.
Hey, that's why we keep coming back.
There's a part in Rosalita where I learned it and I had to count it. And It's where it goes down, 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 down. Now, if you're a real musician, you know that it's ascending chromatically. Now, I learned that later. And so it's 8 bars. But even still, when I play it, because that's how I learned it, I count one, two, 8 times, and then I stop.
Huh.
Old habits die hard.
Okay, for the final question, what is the best piece of advice you ever got?
From anyone?
Anything.
Yeah.
My father used to have a lot of uh, mottos and saying things, and one of them was keep to the right. And he used to say that when I got my driver's license. And keep to the right was, I'll give you two. That was the very important one because it was not just, keep to the right of the road because somebody may be coming to you with their light out in the front of their car. So
Mm.
keep to the right. And late at night, if I'm driving and, these gigs, for example, I may be in all the time, I'm in places I don't know. These two-lane blacktops and somebody may come at you. You don't know if they're on a motorcycle or if they're in a car. And if they have that, coming at you, their left light out, keep to the right.
Good advice.
Another bit of advice I got that I've never forgotten was from Bruce, and it occurred the third night we played at, I think it was the third night we played at the Bottom Line in 1975. We had 10 shows over 5 nights, and the second show of, I think, the third night, or maybe it was the fifth night, was live on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And we were playing Rosalita. In those days, we used to do the band introductions and these very sort of spontaneous, give me 13 shots. And there were these stops and starts, and there were no cues. It was just you had to feel it. And I, at one point, was not watching. I'd only been in the band 9 months. And someone actually sent my manager's office, I don't know, 5 years ago, a picture of the moment this happened where he stopped the band and I didn't stop. And I've told this story in my lectures and, when people have asked me, but I didn't stop. And then I got so rattled, I couldn't stop. So he literally came over and he pulled the sticks out of my hand. He put his hand around my neck and he started shaking me. And it was funny. It was all part of the show. I didn't think so at the time. But so, I'd only been in the band 9 months. I figured this was my last show. Went in and I said, "Gee, I really blew it." And Bruce was cool. He said, "There's a lot of stuff happening up there, fast, furious, spontaneous. Max, you gotta watch out for the curves." That was Bruce Springsteen's first advice to me.
Wow.
And um, and I've always taken that to heart, not just in drumming, but generally. You gotta watch out for the curves. Keep your eyes and your ears open and not make any assumptions. And as I've grown older and I've tried to pass that knowledge, you hope you're able to your children and then your grandchildren. I'm lucky to have the most wonderful grandchildren,
Mm.
in my view, my humble view.
Of course.
It's I've said recently, it's amazing to me how the older I've gotten, how much smarter my father became. He was right. Keep to the right and watch out for the curves.
It's wonderful. Very wonderful. And I just have to say, we ran into Jay. I think it was See Here Now. It must have been 2024.
Yeah. Yes.
We were just walking around and we ran into Jay and his girlfriend, now wife, and he could not have been nicer. We just,
Oh, they're the sweetest couple in the world. And they got married in 19 and soulmates to the end. We love our son-in-law. We love like a daughter, our daughter-in-law, both of them. I mean, it's a nice small family unit. And so Jay went to see King Gizzard, Jay and Chloe, and their daughter, Genevieve, at this big festival out in Colorado. I think it was last week, where they had like 100,000 people in a field, and so that was her first concert. She was 8 weeks old. They put the earphones on her, and well, I remember my wife Becky was pregnant with Allie and about 8 months pregnant, and we took her to see U2. Didn't take her to see, she was in utero, and we went to the Meadowlands to see U2, and she definitely responded to the bass. Crazy. We also have a picture when 2 years later we went back to see them, and we took her, and she was 2 years old, and we have a picture of Bono and Keith Richards kissing her on each cheek.
Oh, wow.
I'm
Oh,
very fortunate to have great experiences in the rock and roll world with our children, and um, and just we're just very blessed in our lives, and I've appreciated and really enjoyed this podcast of yours, and on behalf of everybody on E Street, Bruce and the band, and we see you out there with your shirts, what you go through, and
you,
the
you see
that
this? Spring night.
I see iterations of that. And it doesn't go unnoticed, and it's much, much appreciated the level of dedication you have to the total experience. And one of the things I say to young musicians is if you're in a band, the hardest things to get are great songs. E Street Band has that. Great frontman singer. E Street Band has that. If you have those two things, 75% of the way there. And the other 25% is everybody pushing in the same direction. And that's what we've had for these many, many, many decades. Even when we weren't playing together, even in the 11 years of our hiatus, uh,
Yeah.
we were all tight. We were all tight. I probably saw Bruce more during that time period. He used to go out to LA and stay at his house, crash at his house looking for work. We're supportive during those years.
Max, I just want to say, please, please, I'm not blowing smoke. I've heard you talk many times. You need to do a autobiography. Please, your recall of all the details and the facts and everything is unheard of. You called in one of the most impressive things I ever heard. I'm not bullshitting you. After Hal Blaine passed away, you called into E Street Nation and you gave a 45-minute dissertation on Hal Blaine. No notes, just off the top of your head, and my jaw is still dropped from that hour you spent on the phone with Dave.
Thank you. It was a thrill meeting that guy and Earl Palmer, who was his counterpart in LA, and the other guys that were in the Big Beat. But I enjoyed meeting all sorts of drummers. The guy that played in the King Gizzard the other night, whose first time I met him, unbelievable, just an unbelievable drummer. And uh, I told him, I said, I tried to count along, and I kept thinking I had it, and I ended up not. So if you ever get a chance to see King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard, go see
Yeah, I'm very intrigued by
the
that.
band. Not just because I know them now and I played with them, but my son was right. They are one of the great live acts of the current day. But
Last
no,
thing I have to say, Max. Last thing I have to say, and then
oh, yes.
one of the funniest things I ever read involved you, and it was in a New Yorker, and I'm not sure what the context was, but supposedly the story goes that at some point in time, when you were on Conan, there was a very popular TV show on NBC, and one of the main actresses, wink wink, one of three, uh, wanted to get out of her contract or renegotiate her contract to do a movie, and she was told no. And the agent went to see the president of NBC and said, "No, this is her contract. This is the show. This is what she's doing." And the agent said, "Well, Max Weinberg does it for Bruce Springsteen." And the president said something to the effect of, "Well, when your client learns to play drums and Bruce Springsteen calls her to play the drums on a show, then she can do that."
Yeah, actually, that's a very good retelling of exactly what happened. And that did happen. A very well-known actress who was on a hit, sitcom and wanted to take time off to do a movie. Um, and that became known, I was told, as the Weinberg rule, which if you go to someone and ask for time off, you can only have time off if Bruce Springsteen asks you to play drums.
Right.
Uh, they used it a couple of times. So yeah, when I first heard that, then the guy, he was the vice president of finance, basically, and he was a big Bruce fan, so which kind of helped. But NBC, General Electric at the time, was very, very accommodating in allowing me and Conan himself, to rejoin the E Street Band in '99. But yeah, people don't realize I was a character on The Simpsons, played myself.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
was on South Park. I
Hawaii Five-0.
Hawaii Five-0, 5 episodes, and I played a Queens, New York mobbed up real estate developer named Vangelis for 5 episodes on Blue Bloods.
Yeah, you were great on that, by the way. I watched those. Those you were great on that. That was very
That
funny.
was hard. That's real acting. Those are real actors. I mean, the late night shows are sketch comedy, and you're using cue cards. And if you work for Broadway Video, which is Lorne Michaels, um, uh, everything's on cue cards. And if you go off script and do something funny, that happens. But so that's real acting. You got to memorize it. I'll tell you what, I give Steve Van Zandt all the respect in the world for what he did on The Sopranos and Lilyhammer. I mean,
Mm.
recently I've been rewatching The Sopranos, and
hmm.
he as Silvio, you know, or as he once said, The Sopranos was a TV show. The E Street Band is the real mob.
Right. That's
Uh,
perfect.
but I've been
So
very
that's a
fortunate.
t-shirt. That's
Yeah,
a t-shirt.
yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, but he's a great, great actor, and Steve is. I was very lucky to get those roles, and I try to do honor to the lines and what the writers write. Um, but in one of the conversations, maybe four that I had with Lorne Michaels, he also gave me a bit of advice,
Mm.
and he's a man of few words. And as I say, maybe I talked to him 5 times in my 16 and a half years there. But in the fourth year, he asked me a question. He was in the hallway. And with 30 Rock was great because it was like being in high school. To get anywhere, you sort of had to take the elevator to the sixth floor. And there were always news people and journalists and everybody going through the sixth floor. So I was talking to him he was coming down the hall and he stopped me and he just out of the blue asked me the question, Max, do you know why they call TV a medium? And I'm like, this is Lorne Michaels. I better come up with something good. And I'm thinking, Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message, or, something. And he goes, let me tell you why they call it a medium. Because what you do on TV, it's never as bad as you think, and it's never as good as you think. It's
Mm.
always sort of medium.
That's good advice.
And that really relaxed me because,
Mm.
when you're on TV every night, 5 nights a week, it becomes totally second nature. You wouldn't think it would, but it does. It was an amazing experience being on Late Night with Conan O'Brien and those writers at that time and catching what ended up being the end of the golden age of late night TV.
Max, he
It's
doesn't
a
talk
whole
about
other
it all.
book.
He doesn't talk about it a lot, but Conan and I are simpatico in the fact that he loves Bruce, obviously, but he's also a huge Elvis fan, which you wouldn't know that to look at him or talk about it, but every once in a while he'll launch into some Elvis stuff. And I tell you what, there was a documentary last year, and Conan was one of the speakers, and I was like, damn, this guy really knows his stuff. He
Yeah.
impressed me.
Oh, yeah. Well, Conan is brilliant, just generally. Editor of the Harvard Lampoon twice.
Hmm.
The only other person in history who had that role was Robert Benchley.
Wow.
He got his degree in honors in Civil War history. And as he likes to say, he graduated from the Harvard Driving School. But yeah, big Elvis fan. And Conan is a great singer. And we had a reunion in 25 when he was given the Mark Twain Prize at the Kennedy Center. And um, it was the last real show there, by the way. And we put the band back together again. And he's become a great guitar player, really good guitar. I mean, excellent. And we jammed a little bit. And Adam Sandler plays guitar, as you know. So it was a great homecoming. We had a lot of the characters, the robot on the toilet, and Fed at the pool, and the pleasuring himself bear, let's say.
Masturbating bear, yes.
it was a fun time. I did about 4,500 shows, and you learn to take the comedy very seriously, but you yourself not seriously at all. And yeah, I see you have a picture of Conan and Jimmy Vivino, my partner, and playing backing Conan up. That was
Mm,
probably taken. It looks like the Tonight Show, the short-lived Tonight Show.
mm.
Yeah, it was a Tonight Show. Oh, that's not Jimmy. That's Mike Merritt. Mike Merritt,
No,
by the way,
Jimmy's back.
bass
Jimmy's back
player.
there.
Jimmy's there. He's just to the right of Conan or the
Yep.
left of that guy playing bass, Mike Merritt. For your jazz fans out there, his father was an incredibly famous jazz player in the 50s and 60s named Jimmy Merritt, who was in the original Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers,
Hmm.
who, Art Blakey was probably one of the top five jazz drummers in history. And that's his son. He'd wake up on a Saturday morning with Miles Davis in the living room.
Ah,
That was
wow.
so well. There you got the slightly dark-haired younger Max, and you got me right now
Yeah.
behind.
Wow.
Uh,
Jukebox,
We like
Max.
both
Right.
equally. We
yeah,
like both.
that's so. I hope some people are in the Jersey Shore area.
Yeah.
Go to the
Right.
Bruce Museum first, the Springsteen Center for American Music. Go there. Go get dinner in Asbury Park. They've got great restaurants.
Yep.
And then come over to our show. The doors are at 7, Sunday, August 30th. I have an expanded show, different songs, and we're going to have a blast.
Well, before I let you go, Max, I want to, obviously I want to thank you, but I want to just tell one story to before I let him go, one story that's personal to me. I mean, all the E Street Band over the years that, Springless has been around has been so supportive of the group. And, personally for me, when I've been asking the various band members to either send me videos or whatever we would do, and they've always been, you know, so gracious. There was a time where it was during the pandemic when we had to cancel our serenade, okay, because we obviously couldn't get together, and everyone was bummed out, and I passed out to everybody, who I could, and every one of the band members gave us something back, and every to say how to stay strong and blah blah blah. And I remember I didn't get Max's yet. Now Max doesn't do anything. Okay, the way you see him in concert is the way he is in real life. He doesn't do anything half-assed. Okay, so I remember Allie asked me, "Did you get my dad's video yet?" And I said, "No, not yet. But listen, he's busy, and it's fine. I don't want to, He goes, "No, no, I'll get back to you." So she writes back to me and she says, "No, he's doing something special." I said, "I really don't want him to go crazy. I just, just a little message is fine, and I don't want to, put him out." He goes, "Sit tight." So anyway, I get this thing. And now I get his video, and all of a sudden the video comes, and everyone in Jersey, the Jersey music scene, sent the video that we're talking about, and everyone said did something and gave you encouragement. Now I open up Max's video, and all of a sudden I hear is,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and he's playing the beginning of Candy's Room on the video, and he gives this whole thing to us, and then he really put his heart into this and gave us a beautiful message. And just the person that you are, Max. You've always supported us, and you've always, like all the band has. But I want to thank you for going above and beyond. And I just want to say a couple of things before I do let you go finally. So. I want to take a moment to say thank you, okay? And I want to thank you for the music. I want to thank you for the memories. I want to thank you for all the incredible years you have given to us fans, the E Street family, the Spring Nuts, and to everyone has been lucky enough to experience you behind that drum kit. But most importantly, I want to thank you for the way you have embraced the fans. For us here at Spring Nuts, that means more than we can really put into words. I also want to thank Max's amazing daughter, Allie, who is a champion in her own right and someone I consider a friend. Spring Nuts has always been about community and friendship and taking care of our own and bringing people together through the music we love. And over the years, you've been incredibly generous with your time, your kindness, all your videos you provided us, and your support of this community. you support your support helped make this more than just a fan group. You part of our journey, and you've helped it make us a family. And tonight, having you sit here for way beyond that we ever expected, and we're so appreciative. It means the world to us. We've had some pretty amazing people come through this cafe, and we've opened the doors. But there's something incredibly special of having the mighty Max Weinberg here with us tonight. So on everyone here in the Spring Next community, on for Ryan, Stan, and Jules, thank you, Max. Thank you for a lifetime of rock and roll. Thank you for giving us the soundtrack to so many of our lives. And thank you for giving us your time tonight. We love you, Max.
Well, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Howie. Thank you
What
for
he
that.
said.
Thank you, one and all. And maybe I'll end with something Clarence used to always say, particularly later in life. Clarence used to say, "It's all about love, baby. It's all about
Oh, I love that.
love."
And
And
we
it really is. And thank you for continuing the community that you have. And we're all in this together. You know,
absolutely.
uh, thank you, one and all. And
Write the book, Max. Write the
Write
book.
the book.
write the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you've given me some food for thought.
Yeah.
Someday, you know, the end of the story has not come yet. So,
Right.
not
No.
wrote the book, but I kept a diary, and
Ooh,
I
smart.
got a lot of memories, and I got a tremendous amount of I got some great memorabilia.
Mhm.
Great memorabilia, I must say. So, someday that'll make it into some form, I would suppose.
Yeah.
Well, as we like to say, we'll steal
Hey,
this from the from Bruce. Max, the Spring Nuts Asylum loves you.
thank you. We love you back, and keep the faith, and keep that love going. That's all we've got in the end of the day.
And we'll see
Exactly.
you at the Pony. Everyone, Stone
Yeah.
Pony
Yeah.
this Sunday. Everyone,
Yeah.
let's get
Woo!
together. Let's do this. Let's support Max and the band. We're gonna have a great time.
Uh,
We
All
should do
right.
that.
Have a great night,
Thanks.
Max.
Thank
Bye.
you,
Good night,
Max.
all.
Amazing.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.